Phil Harris and Josh Fegan come together in an incredible fortnightly podcast, Dream Big, Move Fast.
A progressive, contemporary conversation on what it takes to be a dynamic thinker, leader, and role model.
Backed with over 2 decades of friendship, trials and tribulations, they teach from real-world experience and what it takes to dream big, move fast. Amateurs talk about strategy, professionals talk about logistics. USMC General R.H. Barrow. What are your thoughts on this, Phil, to kick off today's little conversation?
Yeah, well, I think it's a good one, isn't it? Talking about more probably, bigger thinking as opposed to just basics.
Logistics is how and when.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. When would we do it? What would it look like? How would we make that happen? Who would we need to talk to? Who would we need to become? What doors would I need to have opened? Who could I call to make that happen? And I just think a little bit about that. That's like you're really getting into the cut and thrust of the strategy and actually making it live. This is going to be a great one today because, I think that this is probably something that you've been chasing since day one that I met you. And that's that whole idea about, chasing better. And that never-ending pursuit to want to be better as an individual. Like Phil, you do meet some people that are know-it-alls, and you do meet some people that are learn-it-alls. And I think this is interesting is that we're now operating in a new environment where people have very short attention spans, given 8 to 12 second, clips on reels. Off the back of that, I don't read. Off the back of that, I just watch. Off the back of that, I listen to a podcast or I watch a YouTube clip and somehow I've mastered the skill. What are your thoughts here about this never-ending pursuit to be better and also to the challenge to get over yourself when you've developed a I know it all, type of inadvertent strategy?
Well, the pursuit of continually getting better, I think it's very countercultural now, Josh. Like the strategy in the marketplace these days is, if you think broadly about social media and creating audiences and followers. So the strategy now is, first of all, create an audience. So how can I do something or be something that creates thousands of followers? And now that I've got an attentive audience, now I'm going to try and be something or be a value-add creator to that audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, if you think the old school way of doing that, to get an audience, you had to be incredibly good at what you do. So you go back kind of pre-social media.
Yeah.
And so the world seems to have kind of flipped, which is everyone seems to be more fixated and focused on the perception of being good as opposed to the desire and the appetite of actually being good. So it's actually kind of being reversed. And that's the challenges people get into. They create audiences, but they haven't actually got the skill set or the level of expertise to actually manage the audience they've created.
An important conversation is that when you walk in here to the HQ at your business, you've got some values that hang across the door and, grow as a leader, work as a team, think like a customer. And when you go to have a look at that, it's like growing as a leader, like that's not based on a title. And so you could be in any role inside the organization, but we expect you to lead. And that's about, making the right decisions and doing that. But think like a customer. How would you feel if you're on the other end of this particular conversation or if you're in a position that you were told that this was going to be happening, whether or not it's a multi-offer or no offer. And then starting to really think about, okay, well, beyond that, then we've got to work as a team. So how do you bring up the new talent that's bringing into the organization? How do you make sure that the established talent actually feels really connected? And I think that this whole idea of chasing better is almost like that Japanese version of the Kaizen business process improvement, right? And, it was interesting because, when we went and did that work with Hillary Corner over at Toyota in Japan, one of the things that she said, which was kind of interesting, is it's like everyone thinks that they figure out the problem in under 30 seconds, and then they spend a lifetime trying to put in the solutions, but the solutions never ever solve the problem because what they identified is the problem is not the actual problem. And I kind of love this because Toyota had worked out the issue and how to resolve a lot of the car crashes globally was not about better brakes or ABS or any of the above. They said the easiest way to remove the car crashes is to remove the driver. Because when you start to think about it, unfortunately, and alcohol and drugs and sleep deprivation and, some of those types of things, that they were a large percentage of the crashes. But was society ready for that moment to actually occur? And so this is kind of interesting is that we're off there trying to, solve with better brakes and, lane assist and all these amazing things that technology have got, which has made it better. But the real foundational addition is that now you've got human beings that are on a mobile phone that are looking at text messages and doing some of those other things. And that's really where the problem sits. So when you think about chasing better, and there was a great old school quote I read the other day, and it was something along the lines of, the moment that you think that you know it all is the moment that you are perfectly prepared for a world that no longer exists. And I kind of think about that as I just had this unbelievable thirst, and I still do it today, of a quest of how could I do that better, faster, easier? How do I open up a seminar? What can I do to actually get like people in a room more together, more connected, more energetic? How can I make sure that I can get a better briefing to you prior to the podcast so that you're really like ready to rock and roll? So it's like, are those things important? Like literally that constant improvement? Because to me, it's rather like there's no like huge leaps in change. I think it's like very small incremental changes. And then one day you're 12 months down the track and you look back and you go, wow, geez, how bad was I 12 months ago, compared to what you've actually come to.
Well, I think it's what I call it's the ultimate test of business humility, Josh. I think it's those people that genuinely humble themselves. I mean, you say it regularly, like know-it-all culture versus learn-it-all culture. But I think that if you are a vivacious learner, that quest for there's always almost comes as almost a disorder. There's always one more book. There's always one more course. There's always something else that you can do to continually improve. And by the way, I think, Josh, that becomes a lifestyle. So it's not something you kind of flick on, flick off. You just say, hey, look, I don't know how many years I've got on this planet, how long it's going to go for, but as long as I'm here, I'm just going to continue to learn. I'm going to continue to try and get better, and I'm going to continue to try and add as much value as I possibly can to the people around me.
I think that one of the most powerful words that I learned in life was the word yet. So I'm not good at my listing presentation yet. I'm not good at auctioneering yet. Yeah. And just by having that word yet like in there, like that was awesome. And I really think about that when you got through to the Australasian Auctioneering Championships in circa 2006, and I remember ringing you and going, oh mate, congratulations. And you said, yeah, he said, come and compete. And I was like, no problems. And he's like, yeah, good luck, as if you're going to win through Victoria. And we got there. And but the way that we did that is that we sought out people that were a lot better than us, that taught us how to present ourselves and how to handle questions and how to make sure that we could handle bidding increments and do all of the above. You know what? And it was the quest. Like even though none of us actually scaled successfully that mountain, we did get up there pretty high. And the interesting thing is that we learn a lot from it. There is discipline to mastery, though. Like I mean to say, because you learned this from your tennis career. I learned this in lots of different ways in helping people to be highly successful. There are moments where there's going to be a bit of like trudgery, and we just have to be just going through the motions until there's a moment where the breakthrough happens. Some people talk about the 10,000 hours. You probably talk about the 10,000 serves. Like what is it like literally that people have got to learn here, that in order to chase better, you've got to be prepared to go through some moments where it's not going to be the most stimulating?
Well, I think that, I mean, I think the key function for the continued improvement is the discipline needs to kick in when you don't feel like doing it. That's the facts over feelings part where you go, hang on. Because I'm sure, Josh, there are times you wake up in the morning, sometimes you don't feel like going to the PT, right? There are certain things you don't feel like doing. So that is the moment where discipline needs to kick in. And if you've created a set of life systems and some life skills, so for example, one of the key things would be that if you've got an ideal week mapped out, and on that ideal week, Josh, it says what time you're going to go to the gym and when your first meeting will be, and when you make those prospecting calls if you're a salesperson, or when you'll do those face-to-face meetings, exec meetings. If that's all mapped out, it's the discipline that kicks in, and those systems and processes what holds you in track. So that's a real key kind of critical part of it.
One of the interesting things, I was reading a book recently called The Anxiety Generation, and they were talking about like how social media and mobile phones have really changed the course of a life. And it was interesting that they had said that one of the things that they'd done is that they have provided like 1,000 off-ramps a day off the highway. And that's better known as a notification. Yeah. And so when the notification happens, they don't give you an instant reward every time. So I might have been mentioned, maybe I've been tagged, maybe there's a photo of me, maybe there's something I need to know. And then you go there and it's not the one. So that's okay. But next time that the notification goes off, maybe this is the one. And so they hooked people into this like unbelievable ability to constantly be interrupted all the time and to lose the power of focus, because at the end of the day, they're in the attention game. So when the app is free, you're paying for it with your attention. You're paying for it with your life. Now, this is interesting because and I think he's just announced that he's stepping down, but the CEO, Tim Cook, of Apple, had said something, and the quote was something on the lines of, if you spend more time a day looking at a screen than you do looking in the eyeballs of a human being, then you've got the mix wrong. What are your thoughts on that? Because that was pretty strong coming from a guy that had sold a lot of screens.
Particularly coming from Tim Cook, yeah. Oh, there's no question. Like the biggest blockage, unequivocally, for people's success at the moment is distraction, right? So now, majority of that is actually social media. But like, if you walk around our sales floor here, not much has to happen to drag somebody away from what they're actually doing, right?
So the power skill is attention. And so like, I'm learning how to really channel in. And I think about like, when you learnt your listing presentation and when I learnt mine, like we had this conversation, man, that you would sit down and write it out. And I was like, well, if he's doing that, I'm going to do that. So I would then write out mine, and then you'd record yours and I'd record mine, and we'd send them backwards and forwards.
On CD, we'd post them across to each other, right?
Don't date us. But that basic idea is that like literally that was really time off the grid in some respects, where, to get better when we're out there playing. And I always think about that, like, when you see some of the greats in the tennis game, like a Roger Federer, back in the day, you would look at him and you would go, oh yeah, he just hits the ball perfectly, but you never ever saw the thousands of hours that he was there on the practice court, the team of like 20, 30 people that actually used to be around him to manage his diet and manage his exercise and manage his movement and manage his mental space and his finances. But yet we all just like relish that we just think that we're all going to be able to go and do it ourselves. And so this is really important. To actually get into a point that if you want to chase better, at some point you've got to almost become absolutely obsessed about that particular skill set, or wanting to be better at that particular thing. And I think that like, you lose 2 or 3 listing presentations in a row, mate, you have got this unbelievable fire in your eyes to want to get better about how to present on fees or what to do to be able to close. And so sometimes disappointments can be the absolute fuel for the fire for you to want to chase better. Thoughts on that is that being the driver for overall success?
Yeah, no, I think you don't see it all that often with a lot of people, right? When you see people like, how obsessed are you about actually, mastering the craft of sales as an example? For a salesperson, we don't really see a lot of people saying, hey, what would it be like to be brilliant with buyers in the way that I communicated, the way that I actually conducted my face-to-face appointments with them? What would it be? What would mastery look like in the lounge room? How about every time I walked into somebody's kitchen, if this is what my career is actually based on, getting people to say yes to engage me as a selling agent, what would it look like to go away and actually craft out a presentation that was simply world class? You're right. You don't see people, not many people anyway, obsessing over those things that will absolutely propel them in their careers.
I think that, one of my favourites, Tom Peters, has got a quote, something on the lines that, or a story where he just says that literally, if I have lived and I've allowed other people to live a little bit lighter in their life, then I have succeeded in what I've come here to do. And I kind of think a little bit about that like literally I'm absolutely at my best when I'm helping others, and I'm absolutely my worst when I'm thinking about myself. And that whole idea is that like we are absolutely here to serve. And I love that idea about like enriching the world of, spreading the good news in terms of like, here is a system, here is a way of doing things, here is a parable that you can learn from that allows you to go and like really go to hit that level of success. And I just think that like ultimately chasing better is like literally absorb disappointment and exude hope. And if you're in a position that you exude hope, but you absorb disappointment, like don't talk negatively about things. Just be in a position that you're positive and optimistic and say, well, how could I? And what would I need to do? And how would I make those things happen?
I think that's really well said, Josh, what you just said. Like you're obsessed with becoming better so you can be a greater active service to others. I think what you said was really powerful there. When you're thinking about yourself, it's when you're at your worst, and when you're thinking about what can I do to make a greater contribution, to add more value, to impact more people, well, then almost you're starting to be compelled towards coming better, right?
And I think like at the end of the day, man, like ultimately, I didn't come here and just go like literally I'm a complete human being from day one. Oh my God, have we evolved? Like being able to walk and being able to talk, and every single time I face an injury or something happens, and then the day that I can get back and I can go back running or that thing can happen. Oh man, that is a glorious feeling. And so like I just think that like ultimately most people have probably got the disease of apathy in their mind. Like they're fully bodied, they're fully able, they're very, very capable, and they just make a huge difference about those, of the things that they actually want to go and do. And, there's an interesting thing in Dubai, for example, they don't have the word disability. It's unbelievable when you go to think that it's like literally that they go to call it this conversation around the power of the determined. And so when you start thinking about like that you're a determined individual because you are getting through life, without having everything that everyone else has potentially got, it's a really great way to kind of think about it. You can chase better. You are capable of more. If you know that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years left on this earth, then, go for broke, and it would be amazing how much you will use time in a completely different way than if you're told that you got 40 years to go. And I think that this is like what do they say, that luxury is wasted on the youth, because at the end of the day, they don't really know that that's important yet. But later on in life, you actually learn that, just a cup of tea with a good friend can be worth more than millions of dollars worth of experiences elsewhere. And I think that like this is the power of great quality conversations, that if you surround yourself with people that are doing, great things, that are pushing the boundaries, and are really trying hard to go to make that happen, you'll pick up and you'll learn, and that thirst and that energy that will come into your life will completely change the dynamics of how you go to perform. Principle, improving is 100% dependent upon the individual. Phil, what are your thoughts about this?
Oh, it's absolutely spot on. It's up to the individual. You've got to make a decision. Where is it you want to be, and then what's the learning? Humble yourself, get better, use it to serve others.
And I think this whole idea is that there are great coaches that can teach a very specific skill. There are mentors that can question where you're at to help you to arrive in a completely different location. There are tour mentors that continually are at you until you get to that location. And then ultimately there are just great friends and great guides and great stoics who can be in a position that they can give you like maybe an insight. And that one little insight can be the thing that can change the entire course of a life. So you have got this one chance to go out there and you go to chase better. And hey, I hope that you're all much better for listening to today's podcast.
Thanks, Josh.
Feeling good and ready for more? Thanks for joining us
On Dream Big,
Move Fast.